In the shadowed halls of Virginia's governor's mansion, a wife's death was whispered as natural, but beneath her chambers, 5 enslaved souls were chained in a web of unholy desires, their cries echoing like divine judgment. What sins lurked in the East Wing, where power twisted into eternal damnation? Tonight, uncover the haunting truth that heaven itself couldn't ignore. In the dim glow of Richmond's autumn twilight, where the James River whispered secrets to the ancient oaks, the official ledger of Virginia's state archives recorded the passing of Catherine Fairmont, wife to the governor, as a quiet surrender to nature's will on that fateful November eve in 1847. Yet, hidden within vaults sealed by iron and oath, lay parchments that screamed of a different fate, a tale woven with threads of forbidden lust, ironclad tyranny, and a blaze that consumed not just timber, but the remnants of a soul adrift in moral abyss. These documents spoke of concealed tunnels snaking like serpents beneath the governor's stately home, linking her private sanctum to quarters where 5 enslaved men dwelt in perpetual shadow, their existences bound by locks no key could truly free. Whispers of inexplicable swellings among the female servants, births shrouded in midnight haste, and a conflagration that ravaged the East Wing mere hours after her lifeless form was found, painted a portrait not of serenity, but of cataclysmic reckoning. The Virginia General Assembly, those solemn guardians of the Commonwealth's fail, convened in thrice-locked chambers in the weeks that followed, their faces etched with the pallor of men who had glimpsed the abyss. Each signed a blood oath of silence, binding their tongues until the distant year of 1947, a century's shroud over truths too profane for the light of day. What unholy confessions echoed in those sessions? The diaries of 7 lawmakers, unearthed like relics from forgotten tombs across decades, all invoked the same spectral phrase, the unhallowed covenant of the East Wing. It was as if the very walls of the mansion bore witness to a pact with darkness, where human frailty met divine fury. Before we descend into the labyrinth of Catherine Fairmont's shadowed legacy, pause and align your spirit with ours. Subscribe to this Chronicle of Fear's Liturgy, and in the comments below, reveal the land from which you hail. For the sins that festered in Virginia's heart could root in any soil where ambition poisons the well of the soul, and isolation breeds monsters unseen. The genesis of this haunting saga unfurls not in the blaze of scandal, but in the embers of unchecked desire, rooted in a childhood that forged a woman into a vessel of both earthly power and spiritual peril. Catherine Henley entered this mortal coil in 1812, amid the opulent haze of Richmond's elite quarters, the third offspring of Edmund Henley, a tobacco baron whose lineage stretched back like gnarled vines through 5 generations of Virginian soil. Their abode on Gray Street stood as a bastion of grandeur, its facade gleaming under the relentless southern sun, adorned with columns that evoked the temples of antiquity. Inside, treasures from distant shores, mahogany desks hewn in England's misty workshops, chandeliers that danced with French crystal prisms, cast a spell of illusory eternity. Yet, this splendor was upheld by the silent toil of 43 souls in bondage, their presence as ethereal as ghosts, ensuring every surface gleamed, every meal materialized as if by incantation. Catherine's early years were a tapestry of privilege laced with invisible chains, a gilded prison where expectations hung heavier than the humid air. Her elder sisters had navigated the matrimonial currents with grace, one wed to a congressman whose voice thundered in halls of power, the other to a planter whose domain sprawled across 3 counties like a conqueror's map. Catherine was molded in their image, to bloom as a rose in society's garden, accomplished yet demure, her voice a whisper in the wind of men's decisions. She mastered the pianoforte's melancholic keys, wove threads into tapestries of false serenity, conversed in the lilting cadence of French, and orchestrated households with the precision of a conductor unseen. At Richmond's premier finishing academy, where young women were sculpted into paragons of submission, the creed was etched into their beings: adorn your husband, birth his legacy, and veil your thoughts in silence, lest they shatter the fragile order of things. But within Catherine stirred a tempest that no etiquette could tame. She possessed an intellect sharp as a hidden blade, a curiosity that prowled like a shadow in the night, and a resentment that festered like an unconfessed sin. In stolen moments, she devoured tomes deemed unfit for feminine eyes, philosophies that questioned the divine order, histories of empires risen and fallen on the whims of power, treatises on governance that ignited fires in her soul. She lingered at keyholes during her father's soirees, where politicians and magnates puffed cigars like offerings to false gods, debating fortunes built on the backs of the oppressed. And with a gaze both rapt and revulsed, she observed the godlike dominion whites wielded over the enslaved, a hierarchy ordained not by heaven, but by the cruel calculus of men. It was at the tender age of 12 that the serpent of awareness coiled around her heart. A housemaid named Rose, scarcely older than Catherine herself, was ensnared in the web of accusation, pilfering scraps from the kitchen's bounty. Justice, swift as a biblical plague, descended in the courtyard under the unyielding sky. Rose, bared to the waist like a sacrificial lamb, endured the lash's fury while the household's bound souls were compelled to bear witness, their eyes averted in silent prayer. From her chamber's veiled window, Catherine beheld the spectacle, her pulse a drumbeat of revelation. Horror should have gripped her, as scriptures demand compassion for the afflicted, yet what surged within was a profane thrill, a dawning epiphany that power was the ultimate sacrament, dividing the world into those who wielded the rod and those who bled beneath it. It echoed the tales of old, Cain's mark, Pharaoh's hardened heart, the wages of sin manifest in flesh. Emboldened by this dark communion, Catherine began her tentative rituals of dominance. She issued edicts to the enslaved youths scurrying through the halls, probing the boundaries of their endurance until fear flickered in their eyes like candle flames in a gale. She tattled trifles to her mother, knowing the whip's shadow would follow, and orchestrated subtle sabotages, tasks doomed to imperfection, only to revel in the ensuing chastisement. Her mother, blind to the abyss yawning in her daughter's soul, praised this firm hand as a virtue for future stewardship, a tool forged in the fires of necessity. Her father, sensing the glacial calculation in her verdant gaze, a chill unnatural in one so young, averted his eyes, deeming such matters the domain of women, rationalizing that a spirited will, if harnessed, could serve a husband well. As seasons turned like pages in a forbidden grimoire, Catherine blossomed into a vision of deceptive allure. Her auburn locks shimmered like burnished copper under chandelier light, her green eyes shifting from embers of warmth to shards of ice with a mere thought, her form a siren's call that ensnared the gazes of Richmond's suitors. She navigated salons with the poise of a queen in exile, her charms a mask over the cauldron of fury bubbling beneath. For society had decreed her fate, no dominion over land or law, no voice in the ballot's sacred right, her essence tethered eternally to father or spouse. She was chattel of a higher order, prized yet powerless, her only scepter the tyranny she could inflict upon those lower in the infernal pecking order. And inflict she would, with the zeal of one who had glimpsed hell's hierarchy and yearned to ascend its ranks. Into this vortex of suppressed ambition stepped Thomas Fairmont in 1830, a man of 32, scarred by widowhood's cruel hand, his first bride and infant claimed by the reaper's scythe in the throes of birth. Stern of visage, with eyes like polished obsidian reflecting ambitions vast as the Chesapeake, he sought a consort to polish his ascent through society's labyrinthine corridors. Educated in the classics, driven by a hunger for governance, he owned verdant tobacco fields that yielded gold from green leaves. Catherine's father beheld a union of fortunes, she, a ladder to forbidden heights. With cunning akin to Delilah's wiles, Catherine wove her spell. She mirrored his desires, her laughter a melody to his jests, her inquiries a balm to his ego, portraying herself as the archetype of devotion, elegant, insightful yet unthreatening, a beacon for his political star. Their vows echoed in St. John's Episcopal Church in June 1831, amid pews thronged with Richmond's luminaries, incense mingling with the scent of impending storm. At 19, Catherine envisioned marriage as liberation's key, a portal to autonomy's realm. Alas, it was but a transposition of shackles. Thomas proved no tyrant by era's measure, his provisions were lavish, his demeanor a cool civility befitting their station. Yet, he demarcated boundaries with iron resolve, her realm the hearth and home, his the arenas of commerce and statecraft. Obedience was her creed, inquiry her sin. The conjugal bed became a battlefield of duty, his visits mechanical pursuits of progeny, devoid of passion's flame. Yet, fertility eluded them, a barren curse that gnawed at her core. Physicians, with their probing instruments and judgmental murmurs, absolved no cause, implying her womb's rebellion against divine mandate. Whispers at galas branded her deficient, a vessel cracked in God's kiln. Thomas's gaze, once appraising, now dripped with unspoken reproach, echoing the biblical barrenness of Sarah before her miracle, yet no angel heralded relief. Isolation became her confessor, as she retreated to the Fairmont estate in Hanover County, its sprawling acres a canvas for her burgeoning shadows. Thomas, ensconced in Richmond's political whirl, left her sovereign over the domain's 100-bound laborers toiling in fields where tobacco leaves rustled like pages of judgment, tending grounds where ancient trees stood sentinel, orchestrating the manner with spectral efficiency. Here, in solitude's embrace, the seeds of the arrangement germinated, watered by resentment's bitter rain.
Catherine's authority was absolute, a godlike prerogative over lives deemed lesser.
She summoned men to her parlor, commanding them to statue-like stillness as she perused volumes or stitched fabrics, their muscles quivering under her unyielding scrutiny. Tasks morphed into Sisyphean ordeals, rooms scrubbed to ethereal purity, only to be deemed defiled by phantom flaws, recommencing the cycle. She sowed discord like tares among wheat, favoring one soul while scourging another for identical deeds, observing the desperate ballet of appeasement. The enslaved learned her as one learns a storm's caprice, unpredictable, delighting in turmoil. Unlike the overseer's blunt brutality, predictable as the lash's arc, or Thomas's aloof indifference, Catherine's cruelty was an art form, laced with saccharine smiles and velvet tones that masked venom. Punishments were symphonies of subtlety, her voice a lullaby heralding torment. Whispers among the bound labeled her fractured, a spirit warped by some primordial fall, reveling in suffering as if it were communion wine. Biblical echoes haunted their fears, she, a Jezebel enthroned, wielding power as a false idol, inviting heaven's wrath. By 1838, Thomas ascended to Virginia's governorship, a triumph etched in legislative ledgers and public acclaim. They relocated to the mansion on Capitol Square, a brick colossus since 1813, its halls echoing with the ghosts of predecessors. As First Lady, Catherine tasted influence's nectar, hosting teas where china clinked like fragile alliances, gracing banquets with smiles forged in forbearance. Yet, this elevation revealed deeper confines, she, a mere embellishment, her power illusory as morning mist. The mansion's 32 enslaved staff became her canvas anew. She reshuffled hierarchies, imposed draconian edicts, demanding flawlessness under threat of caprice. But craving a sanctum absolute, untouched by prying eyes, she birthed the vision in spring 1840. The East Wing, her private domain bedchamber aglow with hearth's flicker, sitting room lined with leather-bound tomes, library whispering forgotten lore, dressing area scented with lavender, hovered above a basement crypt of discarded relics, moth-eaten furnishings, linens yellowed by time, archives of faded decrees. Envisioning transformation, she petitioned Thomas for renovation, framing it as quarters for devoted attendants. Distracted by state's tempests, he assented, granting funds with absent nod. Catherine enlisted outsiders, artisans from afar, tongues bound by coin dictating anomalies, 5 cells, doors bolting from without, beds of actual comfort, not straw pallets, tables, chairs, lamps evoking dignity's facade, a communal hearth for sustenance, and crucially, a clandestine stairwell ascending directly to her sanctum, veiled from the mansion's gaze. Laborers, sensing the profane blueprint, queried not, completing the underworld in 6 weeks. Catherine's inspections were meticulous, her key a talisman of dominion. From the plantation, she culled her quintet, not brute laborers, but refined souls, literate, skilled, their intellects double-edged swords. Marcus, 28, carpenter whose hands shaped wood like a creator's touch, harbored a family, wife and offspring, his chains emotional as iron. James, 26, of mixed hue hinting at forbidden unions, versed in domestic arts, his literacy a secret flame. William, 30, forge master with scars mapping failed flight, his spirit quenched like cooled metal. Daniel, 24, scholar in bonds, anger simmering beneath compliance's veil. Samuel, 29, valet invisible as air, anticipating whims with eerie prescience. In solitary audiences, she decreed their fate, relocation to Richmond's shadows, luxury and servitude, but utter subjugation. Obedience yielded comforts, defiance, exile to Louisiana's infernal cane fields, where souls withered in 7 years' toil, a hellish echo of biblical 7-year famines. They acquiesced, for refusal was oblivion. In May 1840, they descended into the abyss, the stairwell's door sealed by her pendant key. Initial summons were probes, stoke fires, recite verses, rearrange shadows. She gauged obedience's purity, rewarding with bounty, punishing with deprivation, fasts in darkness, vigils in chill, torments etching psyches without scarring flesh. The mansion's other bondsfolk sensed the rift, Catherine's seclusion, the men's phantom existence, feasts disproportionate to status. Martha, veteran cook of 2 decades, confided in daughter Bess, evil brews in that wing, men caged like beasts, fed like kings. Bess, eavesdropping, caught murmurs intimate as lovers' vows, sobs piercing like lamentations. Should we alert the master, she queried. Martha demurred, and speak what heresy? That his wife courts damnation? Their silence, a complicit veil, allowed the shadows to deepen, inviting the inevitable divine storm. In the stifling underbelly of the governor's mansion, where the air hung heavy with the scent of damp stone and flickering tallow candles, the enslaved staff whispered prayers like incantations against the gathering storm. Martha, the cook whose hands bore the calluses of 2 decades' servitude, shook her head at her daughter Bess's naive urgings.
Child, what tales would we spin to the master? That his lady harbors men in her sanctum like forbidden idols?
The law bows to her whims, she owns their flesh as surely as the devil claims lost souls. Speak out without proof, and will be the offerings on her altar, scattered to the winds or sold into deeper hells.
No, we bow our heads, seal our lips, and endure. Survival is our scripture.
Yet, Martha's spirit churned like a river in flood, sensing a profanity that eclipsed the everyday lashes of bondage, a violation that mocked the divine order, where masters played God and slaves bore the cross. She sharpened her vigilance, her ears attuned to the mansion's nocturnal sighs, the creak of hidden stairs, muffled sobs echoing like lamentations from ancient psalms, the unnatural hush that blanketed the east wing after dusk.
In those subterranean chambers, hewn from cold earth and veiled by Catherine's iron key, the 5 men unraveled the full heresy of her arrangement.
It began with Marcus, summoned on a languid June afternoon in 1840, 6 weeks into their Richmond exile. The sun slanted through lace curtains, casting golden bars across the sitting room's Persian rugs, where Catherine lounged in a whisper-thin silk robe, her auburn waves unbound like a siren's lure. The air was thick with lavender and wood smoke, a deceptive veil over the tension coiling like a serpent. "Tend the hearth," she commanded, her voice a velvet blade. Marcus knelt, his broad shoulders straining against his coarse shirt, hands steady as he stacked logs, oak crackling into flame, sparks dancing like fleeting souls. As he rose to retreat, her words
halted him. Approach.
His pulse thundered in his ears, boots scraping the polished floor as he neared, gaze fixed on the intricate patterns of the carpet, woven with threads from distant lands. Catherine's fingers, cool as marble, traced his jawline, eliciting an involuntary shudder. "Fear me," she murmured, her green eyes gleaming with a hunger that echoed Eve's forbidden bite.
"It pleases me."
"Obey without flaw, and pain shall pass you by."
"Comprehend?"
"Yes, ma'am," he breathed, the word a surrender to the abyss. What unfolded next scarred Marcus's essence like a brand from hell's forge. Catherine claimed him not as equal, but as vessel for her carnal whims, her touch a profane sacrament that stripped away dignity, leaving only hollow obedience. Dismissed with a serpent's promise, if whispers escaped his lips, his beloved wife and children would vanish into the deep south's merciless maw, fields of Cain devouring their spirits in 7 years' toil, a biblical famine of flesh. Marcus descended the concealed stairs, legs buckling like a condemned man's on the scaffold, collapsing into his cell. Sobs racked him, muffled against a threadbare pillow, but the thin walls betrayed him to his brethren, their shared silence a tomb of unspoken horrors. In the ensuing moons, the ritual ensnared each soul. James, summoned under moonlight filtering through barred windows, his light skin flushed with dread; William, his blacksmith's frame quivering despite scars from past rebellions; Daniel, whose literate mind recoiled at the degradation; Samuel, the valet whose invisibility proved no shield. Catherine orchestrated their summons with capricious rhythm, one by starlit eve, another at dawn's blush, exploiting them in her chamber's opulent confines, amid satin sheets stained with sin, the air laced with her perfume's cloying sweetness.
Threats bound their tongues, families fractured, lives bartered like chattel at auction.
They dwelt in a purgatory of plush captivity, meals of roasted fowl and fresh loaves contrasting the soul's starvation, beds softer than plantation pallets yet harder than stone for the weight of shame. No egress existed, nights locked in subterranean gloom, days tethered to her whims, the private stairwell a vein pulsing with dread. They dared not confide in the mansion's other bound kin. Catherine's edicts promised collective ruin, a plague upon houses like Pharaoh's curses.
Nor could they appeal to Governor Fairmont. What weight carried the word of property against a wife's sanctity?
Law enshrined her dominion, rendering them mere instruments, their protests as futile as jobs pleased to an indifferent heaven. Daniel, the youngest at 24, clung to intellect's fragile raft. Schooled in letters by a prior master who fancied enlightenment at chain's polish, he once viewed knowledge as liberation's key. Now, it twisted into torment. Catherine commanded recitations from leather-bound volumes, Shelley's Verses of Rebellion, Histories of Fallen Empires, her lounging form on the chaise, wineglass in hand, eyes dissecting him like a vivisector's blade. Queries probed his grasp, failures met with isolation, days in lightless confinement, bread and brackish water his communion, darkness gnawing at sanity like rats in a crypt.
He emerged hollowed, questioning if madness was God's judgment for his suppressed fury.
William, 30 and forged in the anvil's fire, withdrew into catatonic vigil, his once mighty arms limp, spirit quenched anew. Past flight's failure had scarred his back, this eroded his core, reducing him to spectral automaton, performing duties with mechanical detachment, emotions entombed to evade the void. James, 26 and versed in household shadows, pursued erasure, anticipating desires before utterance, gliding noiseless as mist, averting gaze from her predatory stare. Perfection, he hoped, might cloak him, yet Catherine craved conquest, not consent, her punishments a reminder that dominion thrived on
subjugation's thrill. Samuel, 29, the valet's art his armor, sought favor through preemptive service, polishing her jewels with unseen precision, drawing baths scented with rose petals. But eagerness irked her, she demanded dread, not devotion, escalating torments as if his willingness mocked her throne, lashes psychological, leaving him scarred in spirit. Marcus endured the deepest crucifixion, his plantation family a distant light in the gloom. Love anchored him yet tormented, Catherine's leverage a noose, defiance risked their sail into oblivion.
Nightmares plagued him, visions of chains dragging kin away, screams echoing like the wails of the damned.
Tremors afflicted his carpenter's hands, once creators of beauty, now betrayers of skill.
The mansion's enslaved observed this erosion, faces gaunt despite bounty, eyes cavernous as graves, movements puppet-like. Whispers circulated in kitchen corners, steam from pots veiling secrets, the east wing devours them, piece by unholy piece. Mrs. Dawes, the free black housekeeper whose liberty teetered on whispers, chronicled the descent. Her diary, secreted under floorboards like a forbidden gospel, etched timestamps, summons at twilight, returns at dawn, countenances shattered. She bore witness, compelled by a moral fire, though action eluded her grasp.
February 1841 brought escalation, a shadow falling like Lucifer's descent.
Patience, a housemaid of tender years, swelled with life, a commonplace tragedy in bondage's realm, where violation birthed unwilling legacies. Yet, interrogated by Mrs. Dawes in the pantry's dim glow, amid sacks of flour and hanging herbs, patience shattered, hysteria's flood, pleas for silence. She compelled me, the girl gasped, tears carving rivulets on her cheeks. Into the depths, under her gaze, dictating every sin. Mercy, tell no one exile awaits, my mother torn from me.
Horror gripped Mrs. Dawes, patience's terror sealed further truths, a veil over depravity too vile for light. The dilemma crucified her, freedom fragile as spun glass, accusations against the governor's consort a path to ruin. Who would credit tales of orchestrated violations, Catherine spectating like a pagan deity, forcing unions in basement gloom? Monstrous, it defied societal facades, branding the accuser mad or malicious. Mrs. Dawes opted vigilance, her diary swelling with suspicions. The plague spread, 2 more maids quickened, their silences armored by dread, nocturnal visits to the east wing leaving them disheveled, eyes red-rimmed as penitents.
Mrs. Dawes noted patterns, summons under moon's pallid watch, returns with souls frayed. Catherine, it seemed, transcended personal indulgence, engineering couplings like a breeder of beasts, humans as livestock in her twisted Eden, fulfilling urges psychological or profane, perhaps a mockery of creation, inviting divine wrath upon her house. The 5 new, complicit pawns in this infernal theater. Catherine descended with trembling women, commanding obedience in the kitchenette's meager light, stove's embers casting hellish glows. Refusal invited collective scourge, the women blamed, flogged or sold. Daniel, embers of defiance flickering, once rebelled, facing a 16-year-old's wide-eyed terror, he uttered no. Catherine's composure held, dismissing the girl, then starving him a week in solitude's forge. Upon release, the ritual repeated, he yielded, gentleness his sole atonement, whispers of regret futile as dust. The toll etched psyches like acid, forced agents of violation, mirroring their own degradation, shame compounding like interest on sin's debt. Marcus's dreams intensified, familial phantoms in irons, James lapsed into mutism, responses curt as gravestones, William petrified into stasis, prompted like a marionette, Daniel's rage seeped, fists bloodied in secret, Samuel's flesh bore self-inflicted stigmata, wounds weeping eternal. The household murmured, a chorus of impotence, demons feast in that wing, devouring essences. Yet inaction reigned, fear's iron rule.
Governor Thomas remained blind, ensnared in politics' web, debates in smoke-filled chambers, alliances forged over brandy. Virginia's fractures his battlefield. Catherine appeared at galas, epitome of grace, her composure a mask over the abyss. Their union, chilled to formality, saw no conjugal flame, separate chambers for over a year, as his valet Joseph confided to Mrs. Dawes amid linen folds. Spring 1842 shattered norms. Catherine proclaimed pregnancy. Thomas exulted, 11 barren years eclipsed.
Festivities erupted, dinners in crystal-lit halls, toasts with effervescent imports, elite guests murmuring blessings. He doted, ensuring comforts, she radiated, society's approbations a balm. But servants knew the lie, no shared bed and moons. Joseph affirmed, master slumbers alone, citing her delicacy. Whispers questioned paternity. Mrs. Dawes observed Catherine's favoritism toward Marcus, frequent calls, possessive gazes. His stature, dark locks, blue eyes mirrored potential heirs, disguisable as lineage. Pregnancy unfolded in seclusion, east wing her cloister, summons tapering as her form swelled. Contentment enveloped her, as if the child quenched a spiritual void. November 1842 birthed Thomas Fairmont Jr., delivery in opulent chambers, physician and midwives attending, cries piercing like a herald's trumpet. Healthy, gripping with vigor, he sparked jubilation, parties, gifts, christening at St. John's amid incense and hymns, elite witnesses to legacy's seal. Yet, Mrs. Dawes, glimpsing the infant at the wet nurse's teat in kitchen warmth, froze, a crescent birthmark on his left shoulder, thumb-sized shadow. Identical to Marcus's, exposed in labor's sweat. Blood-chilled, implications infernal, the governor's heir perhaps sired in sin's shadows. To voice it? Heresy, peril incarnate. Silence prevailed, a shroud over truths that heaven might yet unveil. Beneath the governor's mansion's grand facade, where polished marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers and the scent of magnolia blossoms masked the rot within, secrets festered like wounds untreated. Mrs. Dawes, her hands trembling as she inked her diary by candlelight's feeble glow, wax dripping like tears onto parchment, committed the unspeakable to paper. The crescent birthmark, a dark omen etched on the infant's shoulder, mirrored Marcus's own, a brand of forbidden union that could ignite a conflagration of ruin. To utter it aloud invited death's scythe upon the household, for truth in bondage's realm was a blade that cut both ways. Yet, she chronicled it meticulously, dates stamped like seals of judgment, hiding the tome in shadows, a silent testament awaiting divine revelation. In the basement's oppressive gloom, where iron bars caged the light and the air grew thick with despair's musk, Marcus confronted the abyss of his paternity. Catherine, her lips curled in triumphant malice, confessed with a serpent's hiss, the child swelling in her womb was his seed, sown in violation's soil to yield the heir her lawful union denied. It was her ultimate sacrament of dominance, a living trophy, destined to inherit Fairmont's gilded chains, bearing Marcus's essence yet branded with another's name. Devastation crushed him like a biblical flood, a son born of shadows, reared in opulence as a white heir, schooled in mastery over the oppressed, oblivious to his true lineage. Marcus, condemned to orbit this phantom kin from afar, serving, silent, impotent, felt his soul fracture, a vessel shattered by unholy force. He had borne the yoke, nightly summons to her chamber, where silk sheets whispered of luxury amid degradation, orchestrated unions with trembling maids, their eyes pleading like lambs at slaughter. Isolation's gnaw, eroding humanity like acid on stone. Endurance stemmed from distant anchors, his wife and children on the plantation, beacons of fragile hope. But this revelation severed them, a progeny stolen, twisted into the oppressor's mold, rendered his suffering eternal. Gauntness claimed him, cheeks hollow as graves, eyes sunk into sockets shadowed by torment. Tremors afflicted his once steady hands, weeping spells consumed hours in his cell, body convulsing in mute agony, tears carving paths down weathered skin. His brethren James, William, Samuel observed with hearts heavy as millstones, their own wounds mirroring his. Trapped in shared purgatory, they offered no salve, for what words mend a spirit flayed. Catherine, indifferent as a deity to mortal pleas, dismissed his unraveling. Her prize secured and heir legitimizing her facade, Marcus was expendable, a tool dulled, replaceable from the plantation's ranks. Her gaze, once possessive, now scorned his frailty, a reminder of power's limits. The ensuing years draped the mansion in a veneer of uneasy equilibrium, tense as a storm's prelude. Catherine perpetuated her profane rite, nocturnal locks sealing the basement like a tomb, daytime calls echoing down the stairwell, more maids swelling with mysteries birthed in dread. Young Thomas Jr. flourished from babe to cherubic toddler, his laughter ringing through halls like innocent bells, doted upon by a father blind to origins and a staff coerced into affection. Governor Fairmont's tenure concluded in 1842, yet his sway lingered. He advised successors from the mansion's courtesy extension, a political favor cementing alliances. Outwardly, the Fairmonts epitomized virtue: Thomas, sage statesman; Catherine, benevolent matron hosting charities amid Richmond's salons; the boy, society's darling, his curls gleaming like gold under southern sun. Yet, the East Wing harbored Gehenna's flames. By 1845, Daniel's resolve ignited a spark against the void. Witness to Marcus's descent, the maid's haunted gazes, his own erosion into subhumanity, he vowed action, risking annihilation for a whisper of justice. Smuggling a missive from the mansion's clutches, perhaps via a bribed errand boy, a merchant's wagon, or a clandestine handoff to a free black ally during supervised outings, his script reached the Richmond Inquirer's sanctum. Penned with scholarly precision, it veiled identities yet unveiled horrors: captivity under a affluent woman's whim, forced breedings akin to livestock auctions, basement cells bolted like infernal gates, threats of southern exile devouring souls in cane-field toil. He etched the psyche's torment, perpetual dread like a noose tightening, powerlessness a chain on the spirit, complicity in others' agony gnawing like thorns in flesh. His plea resonated biblical: I risk my essence to shatter silence. Bear witness, we were souls, not shadows, deserving mercy denied.
Thomas Ritchie, the Inquirer's helm, perused the epistle with mounting revulsion, ink smudges on fingers trembling.
A truth-seeker forged in journalism's fires, he grappled with Virginia's 1845 ethos: bondage enshrined, enslaved voices silenced in courts, their plights dismissed as chattel's fate. Publication courted chaos, credulity scarce, scandal assured, peril to the sender and paper alike. Debates raged among confidants, some championed exposure, truth soared against iniquity, others cautioned futility, envisioning backlash without bomb. Ritchie, haunted by indecision, sequestered the letter in his desk's depths, a relic too volatile for light, too sacred for flames, a choice etching regret into his days.
Daniel's gambit birthed unforeseen tempests. Catherine unearthed the betrayal, perhaps via leaked whispers from newspaper allies, a servant's opportunistic betrayal, or her paranoia sniffing defiance in his bearing.
Confrontation erupted in her sitting room, tapestries absorbing her shrieks like muffled thunder.
Traitor!
After my mercies, she railed, voice piercing the mansion's veins, staff cowering in alcoves.
Daniel endured stoically, his act a final assertion of humanity amid degradation. Her fury crested, he posed existential threat, defiance's seed that must be uprooted. Overseers from the plantation, brutes loyal as hounds, arrived under night's cloak, dragging him into oblivion. Official lore spun escape and recapture, sail to Alabama's merciless fields. Yet, his comrades discerned truth in nocturnal struggles, cries stifled, wagon wheels fading into silence. Daniel vanished, records expunged like a ghost exorcised, leaving voids in hearts.
This erasure extinguished embers of hope among the quartet. Catherine's omnipotence crystallized: no salvation, no egress, only endurance's bitter chalice.
Marcus plummeted further, speech forsaking him, movements robotic, eyes voids echoing Job's despair.
James, William, Samuel beheld their mirrored doom, dread coiling like vines.
Catherine, invigorated by purge, amplified tyrannies, erratic summons through witching hours, nights prolonged in her lair, returns haggard under dawn's pall.
Libations escalated, wine's crimson flow at meals, brandy's amber afternoons, whiskey's fire in midnight solitude, hands quivering, tempera hair trigger blaze, moods swinging like pendulums in a storm.
Governor Thomas, long veiled in denial, pierced the facade.
Catherine's poise crumbled, erratic, inebriated, social faux pas staining gatherings. He urged physicians, respites in Charlottesville's hills; she erupted, demanding solitude, repelling intrusion.
Thomas retreated to plantations and parliaments, rationalizing her phase, granting space as avoidance's guise. Paranoia consumed her, plots imagined in servants' glances, whispers construed as sabotage.
Interrogations turned inquisitorial, punishments for phantasms, floggings for thefts unreal, isolations for sloth unseen. The mansion's air thickened with terror, footsteps tentative as on fractured ice. Pleas to Thomas fell on deaf ears, household dominion was her fief, untouchable. Summer 1847 heralded her fatal decree, another child craved, at 36, with Thomas Jr. now 5. Deluded by past triumph or yearning to reclaim power's zenith, she abstained from vice, nourished body and facade, strolled gardens under azure skies, attended vespers with pious mien. Society perceived renaissance, the East Wing knew intensification. Marcus, her chosen vessel, endured relentless calls, yet his shattered form faltered, eliciting her wrath, beratements echoing like curses, confinements starving body and spirit, verbal lashes flaying deeper than whips.
October 1847, Marcus embraced oblivion.
In cell's hush, brethren slumbering, he fashioned rope from storage shadows, a noose on beam, chair toppled, release in strangulation's embrace. Dawn revealed him swaying, serene in death's repose, features unlined by peace long denied.
No testament left, his act, eloquent farewell. Catherine's response, volcanic ire, decrying his frailty, selfishness, disruption. Body discarded in unmarked grave, replacement demanded like merchandise. But Thomas, summoned by suicide spectre, probed, basement's purpose? Isolation's rationale? East Wing's enigmas?
Scandal sent awakened instincts, whispers long ignored demanded reckoning. Discreet inquiries unveiled veils, Joseph's tales of bolted portals, odd vigils, Martha's of lavish provisions, disparate treatments, Mrs. Dawes's diary, a chronicle of damnation, pregnancies shrouded, terrors etched, Daniel's vanishing, the birthmark's betrayal. Thomas absorbed horrors, abuses carnal and cerebral, breedings forced, heirs dubious blood. Not morality stirred him, owner of hundreds in chains, but scandal's threat, ruin to name, career's pyre. In the shadowed corridors of Virginia's governor's mansion, where gas lamps flickered like uneasy consciences and the James River's murmur carried whispers of the damned, the veil of deception began its final tear on the chill evening of November 12, 1847. Thomas Fairmont, his face etched with the pallor of a man who had glimpsed his own downfall, confronted Catherine in the East Wing's opulent sanctum. Mahogany panels absorbed the echoes of their fury, crystal shards from a shattered decanter glinting on the Persian rug like fragments of a fractured soul. No servant dared approach as voices clashed, Thomas's baritone thundering demands for truth, Catherine's shrieks piercing like a banshee's wail, defending her dominion, they are mine by right, vessels for my will. You, barren in spirit, judge me? I birthed your legacy where you failed. Then, an abrupt hush fell, heavy as a shroud, pregnant with the weight of unspoken judgment. The household staff, clustered in the hallway's dim recess, hearts pounding like drums in a ritual of dread, exchanged glances shadowed by fear. Mrs. Dawes, her diary's secrets burning in her mind like a hidden flame, summoned courage and rapped on the door. Silence answered, a void echoing biblical stillness after storm. She turned the brass knob, the creak a lament, revealing catastrophe. Catherine sprawled on the floor, her silk gown twisted like a fallen angel's robes, face bloated to violet hues, eyes protruding in eternal accusation, fingers crooked at her throat as if clawing at invisible chains. Thomas loomed above, ashen as grave dust, hands quivering not with guilt's tremor, but shock's. She collapsed, he rasped, voice hoarse as a prophet's warning. Rage consumed her, heart seized, or apoplexy's strike. She fell, lifeless. Mrs. Dawes scanned the chaos, overturned chaise, scattered books like scattered sins, no bruises on Catherine's neck, no blood on Thomas's knuckles. Plausible, this natural demise, emotion's tempest bursting fragile vessels, a divine stroke echoing the Pharaoh's hardened heart. Yet, doubt lingered like incense smoke, had mortal hands hastened heaven's verdict? No proof surfaced, only the mansion's walls bearing silent witness. The physician, Mrs. Dawes murmured, her tone steady as a confessor's. The doctor, a fixture among Richmond's elite, arrived swiftly, his black bag a repository of discreet mercies. He knelt briefly, stethoscope cold against cooling flesh, pronouncing apoplexy from nervous excess, a verdict vague as mist, shielding scandal, aligning with era's medical ambiguities. Catherine's shell was interred 3 days hence in Hollywood Cemetery's Henley plot, amid autumn leaves swirling like lost souls. Mourners thronged society's pillars in black crepe, newspapers extolling her philanthropy and maternal grace. No eulogy invoked the East Wing's shadows, the 5 men's torment, or sins interred with her. Yet, Thomas knew the serpent's coil persisted, living testimonies, diaries, letters, a child's marked flesh, all threats to his edifice of power. With ruthless precision, akin to a biblical purge, Thomas orchestrated erasure. James, William, Samuel, the trio enduring in basement gloom, were auctioned within days to a trader versed in Deep South's infernal trade. Chains clanked as they were herded onto wagons under starless skies, dispersed to Louisiana's parishes, sugarcane fields where sun-scorched spirits, overseers' whips echoing eternal lashes.
Separated eternally, their bonds severed like Samson's locks, ensuring no unified lament could rise. The impregnated maids, patients and kin, faced similar exile, scattered to Virginia's tobacco lands and Carolina's cotton expanses, families fractured, voices muted by terror's gag. Mrs. Dawes received a purse heavy with gold, a commendation for northern employ in Philadelphia, the bribe's subtext: depart, silent, or face oblivion. Pragmatic amid fragility, she accepted, diary concealed in trunk like a sacred scroll, boarding a stagecoach on December's frostbitten dawn. Philadelphia cradled her until 1869, lips sealed publicly, though her words awaited resurrection. Thomas convened Virginia's General Assembly luminaries, debts owed, alliances forged in clandestine session, unveiling horrors not for absolution, but containment. Shock rippled through them, disgust at depravity, terror at implications, abolitionist fodder, Virginia's stain, sparks for slave uprisings. Consensus formed, East Wing sealed, renovated to obscurity, records misplaced in bureaucratic voids, staff supplanted by ignorant newcomers. A covenant of silence, inked December 3, 1847, notarized and vaulted, embargoed until 1947, a century's muzzle on truth. Yet, physical specters demanded annihilation. December 15's midnight birthed flames in Catherine's erstwhile lair, inferno devouring timber and tapestry, heat warping iron like twisted faith. Fire brigades' hoses hissed futilely, official inquiry cited chimney flaw, but whispers accused Thomas's arsonist's hand, purging sin's residue. Blaze cracked foundations, collapsing basement segments, ruins cleared, cells bricked eternally, entombed as Pharaoh's secrets. 1848's rebuild reshaped the wing, erasing layouts like forgotten scripture. Thomas Ritchie safeguarded Daniel's epistle until 1854's demise, his heir, inheriting the burden, perpetuated secrecy, passing through lineages to Virginia Historical Society's 1921 donation, filed unread amid ephemera. Thomas Fairmont succumbed to pneumonia in 1856, aged 60, lauded as statesman, secrets interred. Thomas Jr., oblivious to his shadowed blood, perished at Gettysburg in 1863, 20, medical logs noting the crescent mark as mere identifier. James, William, Samuel dissolved into slavery's anonymity, ledgers noting sales, no narratives of endurance or emancipation post-1865. Marcus reposed in Hanover's slave cemetery, marker weathered, Marcus D., 1847. Post-Civil War abandonment yielded to 1920s overgrowth, 1968's development unearthed remains, relocated to public grounds under austere stone. Daniel's enigma endures, no Alabama traces, no Deep South echoes, vanished in night's grasp, a mystery like the lost tribes. Catherine's infamy slumbered a century, covenant's seal held until 1947, survivors dust, archives dormant. Cover-up flawless, yet fate's threads unraveled via serendipity. 1952, University of Virginia's Robert Hayes, dissertation delving antebellum households, sifted Library of Congress's miscellanea. Amid 19th-century household records, Mrs. Dawes's diary emerged uncatalogued relic. Initial skepticism yielded to verification, dates aligning historical ledgers, names cross-referenced. Advisor Professor Margaret Chen, astounded, joined the quest. 1947 opened assembly files confirming delicate matter, Daniel's 1845 missive corroborating torments, sales records post-Catherine's demise, fire's suspicious ferocity, death certificates ambiguity, mansion ledgers detailing 1840 transfers. Authenticity irrefutable, Hayes's 1955 tome, The Hidden Quarters, Sexual Exploitation and Power in Antebellum Virginia, ignited academic tempests, praised for unveiling shadows, decried as sensational. Fairmont descendants, diluted in prominence, silent, scandals burial eclipsed familial memory. Hayes's revelation catalyzed inquiry, historians unearthed parallel atrocities, white women's abuses in letters, diaries rare yet recurrent, power's dark underbelly. Slavery's hierarchy, patriarchal yet permissive for mistresses, birthed hidden violences, eclipsing documented male predations. 1967's hidden abuses, gender, power, and sexual exploitation in the antebellum South by Dr. Patricia Williams synthesized cases from archives and oral legacies,
positing prevalence masked by erasure, contradicting slavery's engenders myths. Catherine's saga exceptional in documentation, most evaporated, inadmissible testimonies, power's shield, fires of convenience.
Today, the mansion endures on Capitol Square, governor's abode, and touristic shrine. Visitors admire antiques, gubernatorial portraits oblivious to plaques absent, East Wing's ghosts. Subtle scars persist, basement bricks mismatched, seals over voids, archival gaps 1840 to 1847, Hanover Ledger's unique self-murder for Marcus. This chronicle evokes profound queries: how many potentates exploited invisibly, sins unchronicled? Enslaved sufferings taboo, unspoken even among kin? Secrets entombed by pacts and pyres? Absent Dawes's diary, Daniel's plea, Hayes's discovery, would oblivion prevail? History's tapestry riddles with voids, uncomfortable truths excised. Yet, preservers defied peril, Dawes documented amid jeopardy, Daniel scribed risking execution, Ritchie archived perilously, Hayes pursued controversy. They affirmed, East Wing's agonies mattered, Marcus's despair, Maid's terror, men's shattered psyches. History must chronicle not merely thrones, but crypts of cruelty, voiceless laments. What resonates in your spirit from this tale? Do archives harbor more shadows, awaiting light? How many scandals slumber eternally, sans chroniclers? Share below, pondering legacies of sin and silence. If this spiritual odyssey through history's abyss captivates, subscribe to our Liturgy of Shadow Truths, enable notifications, and disseminate to kindred seekers of mysteries veiled. Until the next unveiling.